Thank you for being patient as we let the musicians deconstruct their stage and put our stage back in. And thank you for coming out to the annual general meeting of the District of Sechelt. May not be as entertaining or as much fun as the musicians who just left, but if your humor is in the dry side, it can be at least as entertaining. And we do welcome you. And we do want to keep the annual general meeting as something other than just an evening meeting in a dark room where goes. So this keeps it a bit more casual. And we do have the unveiling or the dedication of the Regeneration Public Art at 3:30 today too. So I'd like to call this meeting to order, and as we do for all of our meetings, and the resolution is that it's called to order pursuant to section 99(1) of the Community Charter, and it's our annual general meeting. So we have an agenda that was circulated, and I want to ask if there's Councillor Seegers and Councillor Lutz, I see, seconding a motion to adopt the agenda. And are there any additions or deletions to the one item we're going to deal with? Thank you for not coming up with any. All those in favor? We've adopted the agenda. Good. We basically just have two business items, and how it'll go is I want to say a few words about the last year, the 2015 annual report. Then we'll have our acting chief administrative officer, Doug Stewart, who is our director of finance, speak to the financial and operations issues, and then we'll deal with the final item, which is a resolution to adopt the 2015 district annual report. And when we get there, I'm probably going to suggest we don't adopt it today, but refer it for some more work. So first, I know everyone knows the councillors, but I wanted to introduce the councillors who are with us today so that the public that doesn't normally come to our meetings gets a chance to see who they are. So on my right and your left is Councillor Alice Lutz. She's now serving her third term. Councillor Darren Inkster, who is now serving his fourth term as councillor, and he had a term of mayor in between there. Councillor Darnelda Seegers, who is serving her second year on council. And Councillor Doug Wright, who's in the middle of his first term. Missing today are Councillor Mike Shanks, who has, I think, 7 terms under his belt now, and Councillor Noel Mueller, who's in his first term. A lot of experience. It's probably one of the most experienced councils that the District of Sechelt has had, and I can tell you it's probably one of the most balanced in terms of its range of views and considerations. So thank you, Council, for being here. This annual report reflects the operations and work that was done in 2015. So from January through to December 2015, that's now 6 months ago, and it was the first full year of this council's operations. So we were elected in November and became a council in December of 2014. The very first thing we did in January was to actually start our strategic planning, and we did strategic planning at that time with John Talbot as a facilitator and consultant, and that was to set the goals and objectives for the 4 years, but also for 2015, and you'll see that those are carried forward into 2016. Of the 6 goals that we set up for our council, effective governance was the priority for 2015, and that was the one that we see highlighted in the reports. And effective governance, because it's the structure of council decision making that actually leads to everything else. So we needed to make sure that was where we were. And in order to do that, we started with a strategic plan, as I said. We also put in place a review of the management and organization, so we could ensure that if we did get good governance at the council level, we'd have the operational effectiveness to put in place what we did have. The other event in the early part of 2015, which was part of the good governance and part of the organizational review, was the report by the Auditor General for local government. And that was sort of, I would say without any question, that shaped our first 6 months of 2015 as a council. The management review, the Auditor General's report, and our own strategic planning exercises. The management and organizational review started to be implemented in July through to December. It wasn't completely in place, of course. We didn't get our new CAO in place until January, and then following that in 2016 some hiring. So it very much was a process year for 2015. The other things I'd like to mention for 2015 from Council's perspective was the emerging issues that just nobody expected and had nothing to do with strategic plans or to do with organizational issues per se. And that was in particular the Sea-Watch subdivision, and I'll speak about that in a minute. The fire in July and the drought, which led to some issues which really preoccupied a lot of our attention and changed the tone of many things we did subsequently. However, there was also a lot of increased building activity and development applications, and a very active real estate market, which also got our attention into how economic development was going to develop at this time. And the economic development piece was also something we did in 2015. I want to talk about the Sea-Watch subdivision because it's something that totally preoccupied our council when it emerged in 2015, and in a sense hasn't been spoken to much since December of 2015. I would say it was probably the toughest issue that Council dealt with, and probably the biggest disappointment, in the sense that we realized we couldn't just go in and fix it. We couldn't find a solution, and we couldn't find a Band-Aid that would work, and we knew Band-Aids wouldn't work. So Council was, I think for the first time, it was like a really heavy reality check. Here you are, you're elected, you're supposed to look after emerging and tough issues, and here's one you can't actually fix. There is no solution. And it made a tougher council, I think, in the sense of that awareness that we couldn't fix things that were out of our control. And it also made it a stronger council, because what we needed to deal with and what we finally sorted through over the 6 or 7 months was our fundamental task of being those who look after the broad public interests of the District of Sechelt and our fiduciary trust for taxpayers and residents, and the private interests that we wanted to help and solve. Because the Sea-Watch subdivision was primarily a collapse that affected individuals and private interests, but the District of Sechelt couldn't use its public approach to cross those lines and fix the issue. And that, sorting that out over time, I think was one of the things that brought the council together, because what I noticed was we started off not absolutely clear on the roles of public and private, and not actually clear on where those interests were, but by the time it was finished, council had a very firm sense of what their role in the broader public interest was, what their legal and constitutional role was, and what they actually couldn't do, even if they wanted to, even if we felt like we should. So it was actually one of the formative events of this council. So that's 2015 from the council's perspective. I wanted to call Doug Stewart, who is our Director of Finance, to the stage to talk about the financial statements and a little overview of the operations. Thank you.
So thank you, Your Worship. Today I'm going to be presenting to you, the District Council and the residents of Sechelt, the 2015 annual report. So the annual report was posted on the district's website and made available for public viewing on June 30th. Since then, we have received some feedback from the public. So minor changes have been made to the report, mostly cosmetic, typos, formatting, etc. And we actually didn't alter the content of the report at all. So the report is now in front of council for receipt. So the annual report includes an introductory section which provides an organizational overview, an analysis of the 2015 financial results with statistical information, and finally the audited consolidated financial statements. So I'm going to start with an overview of the major activities of the various departments in 2015. I'll then review the financial statements, and then with our discussion for our vision for 2016 and beyond. So So in 2015, as the Mayor mentioned, an organization and management review was conducted and the implementation of the recommendations did commence. The district began the recruitment and selection process for the senior management team. Business case training for senior staff was conducted, and this was shared with the senior staff representatives of the Sechelt Nation. A major focus in 2015 was Council's strategic goal of engaging the community. So we added the capacity of live streaming meetings, we expanded our social media network, and we worked on updating procedures related to council and district correspondence. We hosted 5 town hall meetings, and 4 of them were actually e-town hall as well. Work in the area of engagement will likely continue in 2016 and for years to come. In 2015, the district's community investment program provided both cash and in-kind contributions to a number of local cultural organizations, festivals, and major events. A review of the district's arts and culture plan was also initiated. Some major capital projects that were completed in 2015 included the Dolphin Avenue restoration with a sidewalk, parking, a cyclist lane, an accessibility-friendly crosswalk, and intersection improvements. Also, there was additional street trees and 2 pocket gardens and irrigation, which was part of the landscaping of this project. And the Ocean Avenue restoration project improved safe trail access to the Trail Bay waterfront, and it included a new sidewalk, on-street parking, accessible crosswalks, and a roundabout. We also completed landscaping on Ocean Road and irrigation between Toredo and the Trail Bay waterfront. In 2015, this district successfully completed construction and commissioning of the Water Resource Center, and in addition, a new septage receiving station on Dusty Road was opened. In 2015, the Development Services Department engaged in a wide range of policy initiatives and development approvals, including OCP and zoning amendments, building development permits, variance permits, sign permits, subdivisions, and building permits. There was also a number of large-scale applications reviewed. And in 2015, the Information Technology Division implemented the mysechelt.ca for online citizen self-service, and we assumed control and stabilization of the downtown wireless network. So I'll now provide a quick overview of the financial results for the districts in 2015. So the consolidated financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2015 were prepared by the Finance Department in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. The consolidated statements were audited by BDO Canada LLP, who expressed a qualified opinion in the report dated May 11th, 2016. So the qualification was based on the fact that the district was unable to implement the new liability for contaminated sites accounting standard. So except for the possible effects of the district being unable to determine whether any liabilities related to contaminated sites actually existed, the auditor stated that the consolidated financial statements present fairly in all material aspects the financial position of the District of Sechelt as at December 31st, 2015. So our revenue in 2015 was $1.2 million more than budgeted. The grants and contribution variance of $107,000 was the results of receiving larger grants from the provincial and federal governments than we anticipated. The sale of services variance of $740,000, it included $500,000 of a billing to a developer for the unbudgeted costs to do with the Sea-Watch sinkhole. We also received more revenue than anticipated from the sale of licenses and permits and from the Sunshine Coast Community Forest. So on the expense side, the district spent $1.9 million more than anticipated in the original 2015 budget. $500,000 of this variance had to do with that sinkhole issue and Sea-Watch. And due to staff vacancies, additional unbudgeted contractual contract services were incurred. Unbudgeted downtown revitalization and community forest grants totaling $385,000 also accounted for this variance. We also were expended in other areas such as legal fees for about $100,000, audit fees for $54,000, and garbage collection fees of $70,000. So the net result of all of this is the general fund actually ran a deficit of $1.8 million in 2015. But this is offset with a surplus in the sewer, which of $2 million, so the ultimate net was a $200,000 surplus from all operations. So overall, this district's financial position, which is our total equity, decreased by $2.4 million in 2015. The decrease is actually the result of 4 positive items that increased our equity, but 1 large negative item. So the positive items were the $200,000 surplus that I mentioned, plus there was an increase in capital assets, net of debt proceeds, about $500,000. We increased our capital equity by $500,000 with the repayment of long-term debt and leases. And we increased our reserves by $500,000, which was the community forest fund money that we took in and received and reserved for future use. So the one negative item that resulted in the reduction of the district's financial position is the depreciation and disposal of our capital assets, which total $4.1 million. And to avoid a reduction in the financial position in the future, the district is either going to need to invest in its existing capital assets or reserve funds for future capital expenditures for asset maintenance or replacement. As the Mayor stated in his message in the annual report, resource from new growth will not be enough. Years of avoidance of routine maintenance for existing infrastructure are catching up. Sechelt is now faced with finding funds from existing resources. Whether these funds are found through cuts in some budget areas or through increased revenue, it is clear the time has come to make planned spending on infrastructure renewal a priority. So these issues and others will be dealt with during the financial plan deliberations coming in this fall. So looking forward, the first half of 2016 has seen the hiring of the new senior management team, and the senior management team is dedicated to leading the organization and to ensure Council achieves its strategic goals while demonstrating the values outlined in the strategic plan. The mandate we've been given is to ensure good governance in the district that employs best practices. We want to ensure accountability and integrity throughout the organization. And to do this, we're going to be reviewing all of our policies, procedures, and business practices, and making changes where necessary. As we look forward, we're going to continue to build on our successes, we'll learn from our mistakes, and we will engage Council and the community. Thank you.
I have a motion from Council to receive the report. Councillor Inkster and Seegers. All those in favor? Any questions from councillors of the report? Had a chance to look at it. Now I'd like to turn it to anyone who's attending the annual general meeting who would like to ask questions about the report. We did have one question submitted, and I'll give people a chance to come to the microphone, and then I'll probably read that question out or have one of the councillors read it out. Any questions? Perhaps Councillor Lutz, you could read the question that was submitted, and it was from Shirley Kusiuk of Tilikum Bay.
I'm on. Thank you. Mayor Milne and Council, last year the 2014 annual report included information from the Strategic Plan 2015 to 2018. 6 goals and 4-year objectives were clearly stated, accompanied by the action plan for 2015. Information provided in the action plan for 2015 fulfilled the requirements of Section 98F as, quote, the measures that will be used to determine progress respecting those objectives for the next year. So, now is it the next year? And while there are statements of key accomplishments, there is no organized, comprehensive, progressive report respecting the previous year in relation to the objectives and measures established for the year 2015. The message from Mayor Milne indicates Council developed an ambitious 2015 work plan, and he is apologetic for the realization that not all projects identified could be completed. Outstanding items from the 2015 work plan have been revisited, and many of them have been placed in our 2016 plan. The 2016 plan, to which Mayor Milne makes reference, is an important missing component of this annual report. The only information available appears to be a cut and paste copy of the 2015 goals and 4-year objectives. There's no corresponding action plan for 2016. Which of the many outstanding items is the district planning on revisiting? Are there any additions or deletions? And when can the public expect to receive this information? Thank you. Shirley Kusiuk.
That was a really good question, and was one that we gave some real thought to when it first came in, and it's actually why I ask for a motion to receive the report, but not to adopt it. I think that it is an accurate portrayal. Over the years, annual plans of the district have had strategic goals and action items. They have never actually had measurables, which is what we need to work on. And so I take this as an important point, and I'll give you an operational response to that question and then what we're going to do. Operationally, the reason the action items and measurables are not there is that with the hiring of the senior management team, we actually only did our more recent strategic planning in June of this year. So we've done the overall broad objectives, which are the same as we started in 2015. We're going to carry those through for the 4 years. But the actual work plan and action items for 2016 and 2017 are still being developed. So let's not accept the report. We're going to bring those action items forward and put them into the report. But more than that, the question refers to the community charter's requirement that you actually put in measurables for all of your goals. And that's something that I don't think has ever been done. How do you actually measure what you're doing as opposed to just what actions are you going to take and what you're going to do? So we're going to refer this back to staff at the end of today's meeting to help develop actual measurables that we'll be able to carry forward year to year, and will, I hope, improve the annual reporting process in the future for this council and for other councils. So good question. And it looks like there's somebody else at the microphone with a question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've read your report through my assistive devices on my computer regarding JAWS. On page 8 or 9 of your report, underneath your index, which is a long ways to go on JAWS to find an index of a report, down near the bottom someplace you have strategic goals and objections. I have no idea where in the rest of the report I found strategic goals and objections. I found some goals and objectives, but no objections. So there's a major visible clerical error by somebody who can see and read your document, and I cannot see, and nor do I read it. I listen to it, and I went over it several times, even by letter to make sure I had the correct word. But strategic goals and objections should never be in an annual report, sir.
Thank you. Turning to page 8, it's on the third line actually, and it's it says 2016 strategic goals and objections. We just heard one objection. Thank you for bringing that forward, and perhaps that's what it was for. Clearly a typo, and thanks that your JAWS actually caught that in terms of dictation, because none of our eyes caught it, and I know we caught a lot of typos going through, but we appreciate it. And this question period is a time to give objections if you have them. Thanks. Next question, Lynn Forrest.
Now that we know there are going to be some amendments, will this become, can you tell us which council meeting that will be coming back to, and will we have sort of a highlighted copy of the report to know where the changes are made?
We're not intending changes to the report itself. What we intend will be an actual new section that fills in the gap on the work plan, the action that's coming, and measurables. So they'll be very clearly identified, and we can speak to that. I can't tell you in advance what council meeting. It's possible that the council meeting in August, but that's only 2 weeks away. So I expect it will be September, and I'd rather have the report done correctly and appropriately rather than sooner and stuff. So we'll have to bring this into staff. We're going to refer it to staff today. So next week they can start looking at that and developing the measures. I would assume it'll be a September council meeting. Thank you for these. Any other? We have one more question.
I can talk loud. Just wondering about we're waiting for the objectives and so forth for the 2016 and it seems to me that we're halfway through that. So two-part question, I guess. Is there in the provincial government rules and regulations for running municipalities, is there a deadline for having a plan accepted and voted on, etc., for a year's operation? And isn't September September a little bit late for that? And I just, so how do they do the dating and so forth, and how does that work?
Again, very good question about process and timing. The annual reports need to be in a draft form in front of the public by June 30th, which is sort of the time that everyone uses. They don't have to be completed, and then once they're in front of the public, there needs to be a minimum of 2 weeks so the public can consider it and come in with the questions, such as we've heard today, which then means if those questions and comments lead to changes, we have to have time to change it afterwards. So in terms of the annual report, the only key date is to have a draft in front of the public by June 30th, but the annual report that consolidates the work that was done in 2015 can occur any time after that, hopefully within 2016, but any time. And it's meant to be a new vehicle for accountability at general meetings like this. This was instituted under the community charter, so we do have these annual meetings. The more pressing question, I think, is in terms of our own operations. If we're halfway through 2016, what are we doing about strategy and planning? And the sort of two-part answer to that is the broad goals and objectives, the 6 goals that we put in place for this council to achieve over 4 years, are not going to change year to year. How we reach towards those goals in terms of specific projects and action items does change and will change. With the situation last year, we did not meet all of the goals we had or all of the action items in 2015. There was quite a few different things that weren't done. They're continuing, and as one speaker's, they're just part of the work plan. The new work plan, which will take us forward with the new senior management team, it will be in place. The strategic planning sessions have been done. The actual work items will come forward over the summer and into September, and they will be for the rest of 2016 and into 2017. So we've got sort of not a revolving, but an evolving strategic plan and work plan based on what we see in front of us and what we're able to accomplish. We're being very conservative about what we can accomplish and pay for year to year. So and we were probably too ambitious and not conservative enough in January of 2015. I think the enthusiasm of a new council and all the things that we thought we needed to get done are going to take longer. But in terms of the statutory requirements, the June 30th publication was the key date. Does that help at all?
Comment on it is that looking at reporting of what's happened and explaining and making excuses or whatever, that's what's happened. You can describe and explain so we understand. But as far as a management tool, setting goals, if you don't set them before the year starts, you can't measure your success, and then it becomes a political, like whoever's pissed off about whatever throws it up, and you don't have anything for yourself to that has solid dates and times and so forth. And that's how you measure. One thing you do to measure progress is you have dates and times and definable deliverables, and you have those as a tool to manage what you're trying to do. And so it seems that part of the issue, that problems you're having, is making proper use of the tool of setting goals and having measures.
Yeah, I certainly don't disagree with your comment on the importance of work plans for accountability. I don't think anyone this side of the room, and certainly none of the councillors would disagree. And that's how we hold ourselves accountable and how we hold staff accountable. So it's not as if we were working without a work plan or without strategic goals. However, they weren't incorporated into this document in the way that people could have expected, and that was because of the transition in time. But they are certainly working with goals. We've got I've got pages on my desk that outline all the things that we're trying to work on, and they are most things that have been identified in 2015 and 2016. But the Director of Finance also wanted to comment on this general issue.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to sort of address your comment on the legislative side of things, because I see really the goals, objectives, and the work plans are really as part of the financial plan development, and that has to be approved by May 15th of the year. We'll be starting that process in September. That's really what's going to identify our work plans as far as operationally goes, is basically what council budget approves for us to do. We'll develop those work plans. Really, the annual report is the means to report back to you what's been decided and what's included in the financial plan, which would have been adopted about 2 months prior. So that helps.
Thank you. Any other questions about 2015 or the annual report or the financial statements? I know it's a lot to take in, and certainly we're always available at council meetings as well if there's questions, and staff is available if there's things you read through in the annual report that you want to follow up and clarify. I'll ask again. Looks like I lost one of the councillors, but we still have a quorum. So before we adjourn the meeting, I do, rather than adopting the report, I'd look for a motion to refer it to staff to deal with the action plan and measurables. Councillor Lutz and Councillor Seegers. Any discussion? All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Seeing no other interest in using the microphone, I'll call for a motion to adjourn the annual general meeting of July 2016. Councillor Seegers, Councillor Wright, all those in favor? Nobody ever votes against adjournment. We're all in favor of adjournment. Thank you very much. There are a small reception beginning over in Seaside Centre, and it's getting a little cooler, so it might be a little nicer inside. There'll be some music. At 3:30, there'll be the Regeneration Public Art ceremony and discussion, and so we hope you to stay for that. But please follow us and others over towards Seaside Centre, and we'll be glad to answer any questions you might have on a one-to-one basis as well. So there is a reception at Seaside Centre.